looking to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, Malma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of this pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On today's headlines, the former chief interrogator and torturer for Cambodia's genocidal Khmer Rouge regime died early Wednesday in hospital in Phnom Penh. Malaysia bars travelers coming from India, the Philippines, and Indonesia in order to curb the spread of the coronavirus following a spike in coronavirus cases in these countries. President Duterte will not follow the U.S. move to blacklist Chinese firms engaging in reclamation activities in the South China Sea. And the case against the Thai heir to the Red Bull billions accused of a fatal hit and run was compromised from beginning to end, according to the Premier's office, calling the entire procedure dishonest. Two Filipinos have died from the gas explosion at a restaurant in the United Arab Emirates capital Abu Dhabi, according to the Department of Foreign Affairs on Tuesday. In a statement, the DFA said the Philippine Embassy in the UAE is also working with authorities on getting details about some Filipinos who were injured and brought to a hospital. Ambassador Jaycelyn Quintana has reached out to the families of the deceased to express condolences and to give assurance that they will be provided all necessary assistance, according to the statement. The explosion that hit KFC and Hardee's restaurants occurred along Rashid bin Said Street, a main road to the airport, on Monday morning, causing minor and moderate injuries to several others, according to reports. Now, in a tweet, the Abu Dhabi government media office said the blast was caused by a misalignment in the gas container fittings following refueling. Following the explosion, the Filipino community in Abu Dhabi was advised to remain safe and be mindful of security and safety protocols. Now, such incidents are rare in the ultra-modern UAE, which follows strict health and security measures. Okay, let's get the latest coronavirus situation in Malaysia. Joining us live is Gail Aldos. Hello, Gail.
Hello, Alma. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Gail.
Here is the latest news. Another COVID-19 fatality was reported yesterday, bringing the overall death toll in the country to 128, or 1.37% of the total number of cases, said Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah. He said the latest fatality involved an 80-year-old Malaysian woman who was among the positive cases reported on August 15 in the Tawar cluster and who also had a history of lung cancer and high blood pressure. Dr. Nur Hisham said she first showed symptoms of fever and chest pains on August 6 and was admitted to a medical center. On August 14, she was transferred to the Penang General Hospital after being found to be COVID-19 positive. Her condition deteriorated due to complications from her lung cancer and had been on ventilator support since August 24. She was confirmed to have passed at 10:38 a.m. on September 1. Meanwhile, Dr. Nur Hisham also announced that 14 new cases were reported yesterday, bringing the cumulative figure for positive cases to 9,354, and the number of active COVID-19 cases is 151. He explained that 5 of the new cases were imported and that they all involve foreigners. There was 1 imported case each that came from Ukraine, Pakistan, and Indonesia, and 2 cases that came from the Philippines. Meanwhile, there were 9 local transmissions, with 5 involving Malaysians, 2 in Kedah, and 3 in Sabah. In Sabah, 1 of the cases is from the new cluster, the Benteng Lahadatu cluster, a severe acute respiratory infection patient from the Lahadatu hospital, and the other case was from a detainee screening in prison. The 4 remaining local transmissions involve foreigners who are also from the Benteng Lahadatu cluster in Sabah. Dr. Nur Hisham said there were 21 cases of full recovery of COVID-19 yesterday, taking the cumulative total number of full recoveries to 9,075 cases, or 97% of the total overall cases. Meanwhile, 5 COVID-19 positive patients are being treated in the intensive care unit, with 3 needing in ventilator support. That is all. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Gail, for your updates there in Malaysia. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, Alma. Reporting live from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, this is Gail Aldous. We live in interesting times.
The UAE sent an aid plane carrying 5 metric tons of medical supplies and testing kits to Myanmar to bolster the country's efforts to curb the spread of COVID-19. This aid will assist approximately 5,000 medical professionals as they work to contain the virus. Now, the UAE's concerted efforts to send urgent medical aid to assist the medical sector in Myanmar is a reflection of the spirit of tolerance and humanitarianism upon which the UAE was founded, in offering all forms of support to those in need around the world without discrimination. The UAE hopes that this aid will contribute to strengthening capacity among healthcare professionals in Myanmar and offering additional protection as they combat COVID-19. To date, the UAE has provided over 1,328 metric tons of aid to more than 111 countries, benefiting over 1.3 million healthcare professionals. Malaysia has barred travelers coming from India, the Philippines, and Indonesia in order to clip the spread of the coronavirus following a spike in COVID-19 cases in these countries. Senior Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the restrictions will affect those with long-term passes, students, expatriates, permanent residents, as well as family members of Malaysians. That is according to the Star newspaper. He also said that the restrictions may also be imposed in countries seeing a spike in cases of the coronavirus. The Prime Minister of Malaysia, Muhyiddin Yassin, has already extended Recovery Movement Control Order, or RMCO, until the end of December this year. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has just announced that India added 500,000 cases this week, and Philippines and Indonesia have the largest number of coronavirus cases in Southeast Asia. Now, there's a good chance that the Philippines could flatten the curve of the coronavirus disease 2019 within this month, only if everyone follows health and safety protocols. That is according to Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana. He said, yes, we can. What will we do to achieve it? Strictly implement the health protocols, follow the campaign plan developed by the National Task Force. The PDITR, Project Detect, Isolate, Treat, and Reintegrate, that is according to the chair of the NTF against COVID-19, in a message on Tuesday night. Mr. Lorenzana was commenting on the possibility of flattening the COVID-19 curve as predicted by a research group from the University of the Philippines, which cited the decline in the number of infections in the past few days. He said the PDITR contains step-by-step processes to be done in work areas, homes, and public transportation to prevent infection and eradicate the disease. Researchers from UP said the flattening of the curve in the country's COVID-19 situation may be reached by the end of August or by September. They said that the disease's reproduction rate in the country fell from 1.5 to 1.1 after Metro Manila and the provinces of Bulacan, Cavite, Rizal, and Laguna reverted to the stricter Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine, or MECQ, from August 4 to 18. The city governments of Quezon City and Manila have reverted their curfew hours to 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. starting Tuesday, with the extension of the general community quarantine in the National Capital Region. QC Mayor Joy Belmonte, in a memorandum issued on Monday, said still exempted from the curfew are those who are out for purposes of work or are on the way home from work, those dealing with emergencies, and those who are out for purposes of air or sea travel. The memorandum added that essential activities such as, but not limited to, market, bagsakan, food takeout and delivery, pharmacies, hospitals, convenience stores, and market operations may operate on a 24-hour basis. On a case-to-case basis, specific barangays in Quezon City may request the city government for authority to be able to impose a stricter curfew in their areas. Meanwhile, Manila Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso issued Executive Order Number 37, reimposing curfew in the city of Manila from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. To recall, Metro Manila mayors agreed on a uniform curfew hour in the NCR on August 19 under the GCQ to contain the coronavirus disease pandemic. Internet cafes, gyms, fitness studios, and sports facilities are now allowed to operate in the city of Manila in a limited capacity and in compliance with imposed health safety protocols, according to Manila Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso. Let's listen in.
Kung kayo ay napapabilang bilang empleyado o negosyante na napapabilang sa internet cafe, simula bukas ay pinapayagan na kayo ng lokal na pamahalaan ng lungsod ng Maynila. Kayo ay makapagbubukas na simula alas 6 ng umaga hanggang alas 10 ng gabi. Kung ang negosyo nyo po ay gym, no? Yung mga sports shop, no? Simula bukas ay pinapayagan na po kayo ng lokal na pamahalaan. Sa mga nagpapatakbo ng internet shop at gym, kayo ay required na magsuot ng mask at face shield at all time. Sa mga papasok naman sa internet shop, kailangan kayo ay nakamask, no? At hindi nyo ito pwedeng tanggalin habang nasa loob kayo ng internet shop. Yung mga pupuntang kliyente, customer sa gymnasium, o kayo po ay hinihikayat na mag-face mask. Okay? Pero, habang kayo po ay nag-iensayo, nag-iensayo, o tinatawag natin na set, doing the set. For how many reps, I don't know. It's up to your instructor. Okay? Pwede niyong tanggalin saglit ang inyong mask. Pagtapos ng set, ikabit niyo po muli. Ngunit, yung instructor, no, ay hindi maaaring tanggalin ang mask at face shield.
Mayors of Metro Manila are now pushing to postpone voter registration within their jurisdiction up to next year to minimize the spread of the novel coronavirus disease within their jurisdictions. However, the Commission on Election, or COMELEC, opposed the recommendation since it could lead to more people lining up in its office during the shortened registration period. In an online briefing on Tuesday, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the Metro Manila Council appealed to the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases to defer the registration period until January 2021 or until it is placed under modified general community quarantine. This is subject to the IATF approval, according to Mr. Roque. COMELEC Chairperson James Jimenez said they're not keen on the recommendation since the voter registration was already suspended for 6 months because of the community quarantine in the National Capital Region. If the IATF approves the MMC proposal, he said it will leave only 9 months for aspiring voters to register for the 2022 elections. He said the effect of that will be people crowding come the deadline because they were unable to register, according to Jimenez. Now, he said it is far safer for us to spread the registration period over a longer period than to crash it to a short-term period, even if you are under GCQ, but you are forcing people into crowds. You might be losing whatever gains you have, he said. The voter registration started on Tuesday and 15 scheduled and on September 30. Now, during the first day of the resumption of voter registration, Jimenez said there were still few number applicants. He also said that they expect it to increase in the coming days. ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
Hey, what's up guys? This is Real Madrid at inaniya ko po kayong lahat na mapanood po ang part 2 ng Tagisan ng Galing. Mapakantahan man o sayawan ng iyong hilig, tinitiyak ko po sa inyo na talagang entertaining at exciting po ang ating programa. Dahil po ito sa bago po nating format. Kaya Tagisan ng Galing part 2, coming soon on Net25.
Do you want to earn a degree while you work? New Era University now offers Expanded Tertiary Education Equivalency and Accreditation Program, or ETIAP. ETIAP is an educational scheme that recognizes knowledge, skills, and prior learning obtained by individuals from non-formal and informal education experiences. It is implemented through deputized higher educational institutions like the New Era University that awards the appropriate degrees. Programs offered are the following: Master's Program, Masters of Arts in Education, major in Educational Management, Master's Program in Business Administration, Bachelor of Arts in Science, major in Political Science, Bachelor of Arts in Science, major in Mass Communication, Bachelor of Science in Education, major in Filipino, major in English, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with majors in Human Resources Development, Marketing Management, and Financial Management. Beneficiaries must be Filipinos who have attained at least high school level of education. The program is flexible and you don't need to attend regular classes. Expanded Tertiary Education Equivalency and Accreditation Program, or ETIAP, is under the supervision of Dr. Nilo L. Rosas, the University President, and Professor Anita P. Santos, Director of ETIAP. For more information, contact the following: Cristina Moreno, 0995-138-0786, or email cvmoreno@meu.edu.ph, or Arlene Sarmiento, 0906-298-9150, or email cedctl@meu.edu.ph. What are you waiting for? Let New Era University be your partner in achieving your dreams.
The temporary ban on chicken imports from Brazil stays as the Department of Agriculture, through the Bureau of Animal Industry, is awaiting reply from the country's Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Supply, or MAPA, particularly on needed documents related to the coronavirus disease, prevention and control procedures among Brazilian factory workers in chicken processing facilities. To recall, the DABAI imposed a temporary ban on Brazilian poultry products after China reported that it found traces of the COVID-19 in chicken products from the said South American country. Take a look.
Ang Brazil po ngayon ay pangalawa na bansa na kung saan ang laki po ng COVID-19 infection. Mahigit 3 milyon ang kanilang active cases. Yes, napakaraming namatay. And karamihan po ng ini-import nating meat doon, no, mechanically deboned meat lang naman, hindi naman fresh, no, ay galing sa Brazil.
Yes, sir.
Ang punto po dito, kaya nakita pong may chicken wings doon na in-export sa China, nakita ng mga Chinese authorities na merong tainted with COVID-19. So tayo naman nag-react doon sa balitang yon at nag-impose tayo ng temporary ban. Ayan po. Kaya the ban stays, ito lang po, mainit na balita, sinabi ni Secretary ng Bureau of Animal Industry, Secretary William Dar, Director Ronnie Domingo, na the ban stays and while awaiting for documents coming from meat processing facilities na kung saan dun sa Brazil, ang kanilang factory workers po ay may COVID-19. So, pwede pong paki-explain ito?
Yes, sir. Actually po, ang basis natin doon sa ban, yun nga po yung nagiging isang contentious issue ngayon, na wala daw transmission from meat to humans, ang COVID. Ang main issue po natin dito, nung inaccredit po natin ito mga foreign meat establishments na to, ito pong mga planta kung saan po kinakatay at pinaprocess ito mga manok na to, ang isa po sa mga basehan natin dyan ay yung good manufacturing practice. At dito po sa GMP na to, or good manufacturing practice, nire-require po natin ang mga planta na ito na kailangan healthy po yung mga manggagawa na nandun sa loob, sir.
Okay.
The Philippine Association of Meat Processors, Inc. earlier asked the DA to reconsider the ban on poultry imports, including mechanically deboned meat from Brazil, as these are used as raw materials for their canned meat products. To date, Brazil has the world's second worst COVID-19 outbreak, reporting more than 3.2 million cases and more than 105,000 deaths since the start of the pandemic. Brazil currently accounts for nearly 20% of the country's poultry meat imports. Others are sourced from the U.S. and Europe. Some 450 million children cannot go back to school as their new academic year begins because of the COVID-19 crisis, the head of the UN Education and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, said on Tuesday, describing the situation as an emergency for global education. UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay warned that several generations of youngsters face the threat of school closures. According to the UN agency, 900 million pre-primary to secondary students were set to return school between August and October. But fewer than half from more than 150 countries can actually return to classrooms, according to UNESCO. With some 128 million students already in the middle of their academic year, only around 1 in 3 pupils globally, or 561 million students, will attend classes. According to UNESCO, to date, students around the world have lost an average of 60 days of schooling since coronavirus lockdowns began in February and March. Will the government slap a suggested retail price or SRP on laptops and smartphones to make them affordable in the time of distance learning? The verdict will be made this week. Now, Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez on Tuesday said his agency will decide this week after it reviews the findings of his consumer protection officials who studied the matter. In August, the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, moved to assess the possibility of putting a price ceiling on laptops and smartphones. And as the threat of COVID-19 persists, academic institutions had to transfer education systems to online from the classroom. Students then were left with no other option but to acquire a gadget they can use for distance learning. And this is where the DTI steps in as the government's price monitoring body. It can place an SRP on merchandise items it deems either as a basic necessity or prime commodity. With such power, it can hold off prices to a certain level to the benefit mainly of poor households, especially in a global crisis where millions have already lost their jobs. This week, we are releasing, he said, our decision on whether we will impose an SRP. Lopez said in a radio interview. Offhand, he said, our observation is that there are many suppliers, many options to choose from with wide range of prices. He also admitted he is reluctant to put an SRP on computers and gadgets as models tend to differ in terms of features, performance, and price. Given the array of brands available in the market, he also said enforcing an SRP may fail to address the problem of affordability. If it's up to him, he said he would leave it to competing firms to dictate the swing of prices. But he said the situation now requires the government to intervene. Now he advised buyers to just get the cheapest brands if all they need is a unit to connect to the internet. Hunting for specific models with specific features will only lead them to pay more. Progressive groups, mostly of youths, want the government to freeze this calendar year in consideration of students facing financial constraints and health issues from the pandemic. The Department of Education, or DepEd, said schools should consider the screen time guidelines by age recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization in their distance learning strategies. In a department memorandum 2020-00162, suggested strategies in implementing distance learning delivery modalities for school year 2020 to 2021, DepEd said kindergarten pupils should have maximum of 1 hour daily screen time. Grades 1 to 5, a maximum of 1.5 hours daily. Grades 6 to 8, a maximum of 2 hours. Grades 9 to 12, a maximum of 4 hours daily, 2 hours in the morning and another 2 hours in the afternoon. Yusek Justado San Antonio said this strategy was suggested pending the policy guidelines on the implementation of learning delivery modalities for formal education that would be issued to schools which were closed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The memo also said in preparation of the weekly home learning plan and class programs, schools shall comply with the recommended screen time for learners. It added that online activities shall be complemented with locomotion, motor, sensory, and audio tools which will support subjects related to performing arts and clubs. Learners shall also be provided with activity sheets, and be given performance-based tasks to accomplish. It may be recalled that in a survey conducted by DepEd 3.8 million in July, parents preferred online learning. Earlier, the Department of Health said that online class should be shorter than 6 to 8 hours a day. A former school teacher who became the top torturer for Cambodia's genocidal Khmer Rouge regime, overseeing the deaths of around 15,000 people, died on Wednesday at the age of 77. Take a look. Kaing Gek Eve, better known by his allies as Dush, had served as the head of the infamous Tuwol Slang prison and was later convicted of crimes against humanity by a UN-backed war crimes tribunal for his role in the Killing Fields regime. Born in 1942, the former mathematics teacher became the Khmer Rouge's top interrogator when the ultra-Maoist regime was in power from 1975 to 79. Dush oversaw the torture of thousands of men, women, and children in a neighborhood high school that was converted into a detention center, extracting false confessions from his victims and sending them to their deaths on the outskirts of the capital, Phnom Penh. After the Khmer Rouge's fall from power, he maintained posts within the communist movement as it battled Vietnam-backed troops. The jailer turned to a teacher in his later years, was working for an aid agency in Western Cambodia under a false name at the time of his arrest in 1999, when many had long assumed he was already dead. Dush was the first member of the Khmer Rouge to face judgment before a war crimes tribunal in Cambodia and was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2012. Dush's testimony at the tribunal served as an important milestone for millions of Cambodians who had suffered under the brutal regime, which killed up to 2 million during the brief 4-year period. He had maintained a huge archive of photos, confessions, and other documents with which UN prosecutors traced the final horrible months of thousands of inmates' lives. It also revealed facets of the regime's secretive workings, such as the repeated purges driven by paranoia from the leadership that its enemies were within its ranks. Dush became a cadre in 1970 in order to transform society to oppose the government, to oppose torture, he said during the trial, and helped to oversee a series of jungle prisons. After the regime seized power in 1975, he was installed as head of Tuwol Slang, referred to as S21 by the Khmer Rouge, which he staffed with uneducated teenage boys. He said they could be easily indoctrinated because they were like a blank piece of paper. While he had begged for forgiveness for crimes committed at the jail, he later dismayed survivors by asking to be acquitted on the grounds that he was not a senior member of the Khmer Rouge hierarchy. His death was a reminder that justice is a long and difficult process, according to Yung Chang, director of the Documentation Center of Cambodia, which conducts research on the Khmer Rouge regime. The case against the Thai heir to the Red Bull billions accused of a fatal hit and run was compromised from beginning to end, according to the Premier's office, calling the entire procedure dishonest. The announcement comes a month after charges against Vorayut boss Yudvidya were dropped by the police and Attorney General's office, prompting outrage from ordinary Thais who saw it as another example of the impunity enjoyed by the kingdom's elite. Take a look.
ยกคดีขึ้นดำเนินการใหม่โดยเฉพาะคดีที่ยังไม่ขาดอายุความดำเนินการแน่นอนนะมันมี 2-3 คดีที่มีอยู่ 2. ดำเนินคดีและวินัยต่อผู้เกี่ยวข้องทุกฝ่าย
สร้างผลไม้อันเป็นพิษ บริโภคไม่ได้ครับต้องเสียไปทั้งหมดต้องฟันต้นไม้ทิ้งทั้งหมดเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยในกระบวนการเราจึงเห็นสมควรให้มีการสอบสวนใหม่
The controversy surrounding the case comes during a tense period for the government as a burgeoning pro-democracy movement has gathered pace with near-daily protests across the country. Bora Youth is accused of killing a police officer in a hit-and-run back in 2012 after crashing his Ferrari in Bangkok and for using cocaine at the time of the accident. He fled the country on his private jet in 2017, but his return was widely expected after authorities revealed in July that all charges against him had been dropped. But a huge public outcry, including hundreds of thousands of people using the hashtag Boycott Red Bull on social media, prompted 3 new probes. One set up by the Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha's office concluded Tuesday that the entire investigation had been illegal. He said the case's investigation was compromised. This was according to committee chairman Vicha Mahakun. He said it was done dishonestly and with conspiracy to weaken the case. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, whose administration has long enjoyed close alliances with the kingdom's billionaire clans, said the Red Bull case cast doubt on the country's legal and criminal systems. As the grandson to Red Bull co-founder Chileo Uvida, the 38-year-old is part of a clan which boasts a net worth of $20.2 billion, making it Thailand's second richest family, according to Forbes. Several other incidents added to public suspicions of a cover-up, including the death in a motorcycle accident last month of a man police presented years after the fact as a witness who had cleared Bora Youth of involvement. In other news, a regional military commander has dismissed reports that one of the brains behind the recent suicide bombings carried out by 2 women in Sulu has already slipped into the adjoining islands. Now, this developed as the Philippines and Australia vow to further collaborate and strengthen their counter-terrorism partnership. Australia is a key security partner of the country with the existing status of Visiting Forces Agreement, or SOFVA, and helped the Philippine military during the 5-month campaign to boot out Islamic State fighters from the occupied Marawi city in 2017 by providing intelligence and reconnaissance support. Army Chief Lieutenant General Cirilito Sobejana and Australian Ambassador Steve Robinson have expressed their mutual support to counter-terrorism efforts during a virtual conference that was held days after the suicide bombings in Holo, which killed 15 people, 8 of them soldiers, and wounded 74 others, most of them civilians. The suicide attacks were carried out by the wives of 2 members of the Abu Sayyaf group who were radicalized by the ISIS, one of whom was Norma Lasuka, the suicide bomber in the attack of the headquarters of the 1st Brigade Combat Team located in Indanan, Sulu in July last year. Armed Forces Western Mindanao Command Commander Major General Corleto Binluan said that one of the brains behind the suicide bombings in Holo, Abu Sayyaf sub-leader Mudzrimir Mundi Sawadjaan, is still in the province, belying reports that the wanted terrorist had already slipped to either Basilan or Zamboanga. Sawadjaan is the nephew of Hatib Hadjan Sawadjaan, an ASG commander who is currently head of the ISIS in Mindanao, and also the subject of the ongoing military operations in Sulu, along with the other leaders and members of the local terrorist group. Reports that Sawadjaan had already escaped from Sulu swiped or swirled after the city government of Zamboanga offered a reward for information leading to the arrest or neutralization of Sawadjaan and Indonesian terrorists Andy Basco and Reski Fantasia, the 3 alleged brains behind the Holo suicide bombings. President Duterte will not follow the U.S. move to blacklist Chinese firms engaging in reclamation activities in the South China Sea, according to Malacanang. In a virtual palace briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said all projects involving Chinese companies that are banned in the U.S. can continue in the Philippines. Take a look.
The Sangli project will push through. The President declared last night that the Americans ay pwede po nilang ipatupad yung blacklisting ng mga Chinese companies sa kanilang teritoryo sa Amerika at siguro dun sa kanilang mga base militar na nasa ilalim ng kanilang jurisdiction. Pero malinaw pong sinabi ni Presidente, hindi po siya susunod sa direktiba ng mga Amerikano dahil tayo po ay malaya at independyenteng bansa at kinakailangan po natin ang mga namumuhunan galing po sa bansang China. So, Sangli and all other projects, kahit sinong pong Chinese contractor yan, tuloy-tuloy po yan dahil ang pang-nasyonal na interest natin ay masigurado na matapos po yung mga flagship projects natin sa ilalim ng Build, Build, Build.
The Sangli Airport project, which involves land reclamation and expansion of an existing small airport, was bagged by state-owned China Communications Construction Company Limited and Lushotan's Macro Asia. Several firms related to CCCC were among those facing restrictions imposed by the United States. Washington imposed sanctions against China, state-owned enterprises, and visa restrictions on individuals behind the dredging and the militarization of the disputed features in the South China Sea. The Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Taiwan have overlapping claims over the South China Sea with Beijing, which has built artificial islands in the contested waters. ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
Ein sonniger Tag heute hier in Berlin vor dem Bundestag. Ich bin Irene Juliet Arzadon und möchte diese Gelegenheit nutzen, um ein paar Worte mit euch zu teilen. An alle Menschen da draußen. In dieser Zeit lasst uns nicht vergessen, den Menschen zu danken, die ihr Leben für uns opfern. Sei es die Menschen, die im Krankenhaus arbeiten, in den Altenheimen sowie in den Arztpraxen, aber auch an die Menschen, die im Lebensmittelhandel sich befinden. Die Kassierer. Manchmal reicht es aus, um ihnen ein freundliches Lächeln zu geben. Denn die Menschen, die heute am Arbeiten sind, weil sie nicht so wie einige von uns zu Hause bleiben können, die sollten wir wertschätzen. Ihnen sollten wir unseren Dank ausrichten. Darum lasst uns noch mehr zusammenhalten. Sie wertschätzen.
The New Era University, in its 45th year of excellence, discipline, and service to humanity, will offer online education at all levels beginning this first semester academic year 2020 to 2021 through the NEU Virtual Learning Environment, or NEU VLE. New Era University offers a complete basic education cycle from kindergarten up to senior high school, offering all strands. NEU has 18 colleges, and 2 graduate schools. It also offers ALS and ETI. Best of all, NEU has the most affordable tuition fees among private universities in the Philippines. NEU is at Quezon City, the city of San Fernando, Pampanga, General Santos City, South Cotabato, Lipa City, Batangas, and Pinugay, Baras, Rizal.
New Era University is under the stewardship of Dr. Dilo L. Rosas.
What are you waiting for? Be part of the new normal. Enroll now. Classes start on October 5, 2020.
Welcome back. Joining us from Cambodia is our EBC correspondent, Meldy Mahinay. Hello, Meldy.
Hello, good afternoon, Arma. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. So, silk weavers in a place there in Cambodia is being affected by the pandemic?
Yes, Alma, in Kandal province.
Go ahead.
Okay, here's the latest update. A group of villagers who produce Khmer silk products in Prehak, Bangkang in Kandal provinces, Kaksas Kandal district are worried about losing their jobs due to the drop of sales amid the pandemic. As the COVID-19 crisis still remains, people in the village whose livelihood depends on weaving and selling handmade silk products, if the silk product sales keeps falling, they will have to stop weaving, which is the only means they have to earn a living. Before the pandemic impacted the world, their products were sold to foreign tourists, national event organizers, silk sellers, and wedding planners. But now they have to reduce the production because of the falling orders. Sitting at his loom, Lok Seha, a silk weaver in Preak, Bangkang village, said, since the COVID-19 started to impact Cambodia's tourism, not even a single tourist come to buy silk products for souvenirs. He said that a few of his customers who have bought his silk product garments are unable to sell them in their shops. Seha said he will be forced to cut down on making his products, such as silk sarong, silk scarves, and sell the rest of discounted prices. He said, if we now sell the silk products at the original price, there will be no one to buy. According to May Kalyan, chairman of the Board of Trustees at the Royal University of Phnom Penh and the main person behind the Silk Research Center, 400,000 tons of silk products are produced in the country every year. Most of them of white silk, which will be imported. Cambodia has a gold silk from its silkworms. Seya said, most of the white silk raw material is imported from Vietnam. We have reduced the amount of raw material imported to 10% due to the falling numbers of customers, he said. He added he only imports white silk as his family homegrown mulberry trees and self-raised silkworms only provide gold silk. Another silk weaver in Preak Bangkang village, Heng Nai Seng, said most of her raw material is imported. She said 30% of the silk I use are from my own trees and worms, and 70% is imported. Just like Seha, Nai Cheng said she has to cut down on importing raw silk as she has reduced production. She said she now only gets a single customer once or twice a week. Sales have decreased since COVID-19 struck and the government banned public gathering as well as event organizing. She said there are no weddings or ritual celebrations which required people to buy silk garments like hol or pamong. Nai Cheng said she wants to temporarily stop production while as the COVID-19 situation remains. According to Chaob Seror, Prek Bangkang's village chief, there are 21 families who produce silk products to make a living. Related to the issue, Seyang Tai, an undersecretary state at the Ministry of Commerce, yesterday said the ministry has a number of mechanisms to help such weavers, such as encouraging them to join government-backed associations or communities, especially by the Ministry of Commerce and other relevant institutions. In addition, the Ministry of Commerce has a project called AIMS that help connect weavers using gold silk with a company which supplies products to local and foreign markets. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Meldy, for your updates there in Cambodia. Hopefully this will be solved soon. Thank you, Meldy. Meldy? All right. Thank you very much, Meldy. Okay, penguins in Singapore Zoo are regularly being taken out for walks around the deserted zoo during the city-state's partial coronavirus lockdown, with the creatures checking out the area around their exhibit and exploring the children's playground. Take a look. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. Malma Angeles, we live in interesting times.